feels like I'm taking food out of my kid's mouth. When people hear NFTs, they think of a $300,000 picture of a cartoon monkey. Your customers are not the product anymore, they're part of the brand. It's the first time in history, capabilities.
Obligatorily.
I don't know if that's a word.
What is up, guys? Welcome to the Changemakers podcast brought to you by Frenik Labs. I am Matt Bravo, and we have a very special episode today. We are here with the main man of Web3 in Atlanta, Georgia, my good friend, Jonathan Hessing. Jonathan, thank you for joining us today, my guy.
Thanks for having me, man. Super excited about it.
So we've got a lot of stuff to cover. A very colorful background with your career, your most recent company, Keyspace Studio, which is doing a lot of cool things in the marketing space that we are also kind of integrated with here at Frenik Labs. And I also want to give people a little bit of an idea about your background too, just because I've known you now for probably about 10 years. I think I was 18.
Unfortunately.
Jeez, this guy's just roasting me. This is Kenny Rogers Roasters over here.
Oh man, come on, you got thick skin.
Yeah, you're right. That said, you've been very successful in the technology space and now are deploying that talent into this Web3 marketing technology, which is really cool. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Tell us what you've been working on. Tell us about Keyspace.
Yeah, so Keyspace is my newest brainchild. I do it with one of my co-founders, Chris Lowe, who actually, I met him. He was an investor at my first company, and we grew a friendship and started building this. And we kind of see and I'm sure we'll dive deeper into it, so I'll keep it kind of high surface, or surface level rather. But we see a future where the internet isn't going to be what we've known it to be, right? You hear people say Web3 sometimes, and I'm sure we'll dive into what that means, but Web 1 was kind of, the original internet, 90s, think .com boom. Web 2 was like the age of social media. You started to have instead of just being able to consume content, you could now create it. And then Web 3 is now about creation from Web 1, creation and consumption from Web 2. Now it's about creation, consumption, and ownership. And so how do we take advantage of this new kind of internet and apply it to the world of marketing and take this idea of ownership and help people not just be a product of a company or be part of a brand, but feel like they have ownership or a actual piece of the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the reasons also I wanted to have you as one of the first guests on the show, because with this type of technology, we're still at the early stages of adoption, right? I love watching stuff from the early mid 90s where people are like, I'll send you an email, and they're like, that's never gonna take off.
Or you see that video of Bill Gates on a talk show talking about no one's ever gonna order a roll of toilet paper or paper towels off the internet. Why would you do that? And now, people I order my groceries off the internet, off my phone.
Right, and so I think this will be a good opportunity for us to bring it down to the use case surface level, because right now, a lot of people think that blockchain is when your card gets declined at the jewelry store. So
that was good. That was a good pun. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. For anyone who didn't get it, blockchain, prevent the purchasing of the chain.
Right, which is not what we're talking about today, but I did promise myself that I would throw that pun in there. That one is gonna.
I see it in your notes.
Yeah.
Shut up, man.
So let's go back. This is kind of fun because we run this story back pretty much to the time that we met each other. I was still in college. You're a couple years older than me, and you were living in a house right off campus with a lot of people, and I was like, what the heck is going on here? And you were running a technology conglomerate out of this small place, which is now an enormous business with Harvard and Stanford guys and tons of venture capital. So I'm interested to hear. Take me back to the very beginning, really around the time that we met, and how you got kicked off on with Shouty.
Yeah, so Shouty was the first venture, founded with a couple of my fraternity brothers from Kennesaw. And we had this idea we were actually at a Mazzy's bar in Kennesaw. And we had this idea because of this Alabama-Auburn football game, which if some of y'all remember in 2013 was just nuts. And the whole bar in Mazzy's went crazy, and Kennesaw rather went crazy. And we were like, if this is what Kennesaw is like, what's it like in, Tuscaloosa or in Toomer's Corner and is that Auburn, Alabama? Regardless. And we were like, we want to see what it's like. And Snapchat at the time had come out, but they didn't have where you could have events yet. It was only friend to friend messaging. So we thought it'd be cool if you could follow events and watch user-generated content only in the form of videos and pictures. And so we went to develop this, and we were able to raise some initial funding. And when we did that, this is the house you're referencing. And actually, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution wrote an article about it, talking about, trying to be like, Silicon Valley and Kennesaw. And, I'm not exaggerating. We had bunk beds in the living room. We had people living in the living room. We had a whole content team. We had a whole team. Personal branding was the new buzz at that time. The camera becoming the new keyboard was just a new thought that wasn't really like, it was super new. And so we wanted to build this consumer app that was the first of its kind, where it's user-generated content focused on events, not on friends, but on events. And we rolled out an app, we built it, and within a few months of being in the App Store, Snapchat rolled out the same thing. And we had to pivot. And so our pivot was that same concept, but with live video. So imagine VR functionality, but using your finger on your phone, using your mouse on your computer, your remote on your TV, and panning around an atmosphere, picking where you want your perspective of viewing to be. So we pivoted, and you learn a lot of things, and about the entrepreneurial journey and making pivots and evolving. But yeah, I mean, that was crazy. That was the spawn of it. And it was you're 22, 23 years old. You've got 6 figures in your bank account for the first time ever. And for me, that meant we're not paying ourselves. We're not living outside of our office. So we made our house our office and began building that company. It was
definitely a cool environment. I had never seen anything like it. Apparently, the AJC hadn't either. But I want to zero in on a piece of that, right? You were in the App Store for a few months. This is something that already undergone months and months, but probably at this point over a year of development, right? A lot of input from you, the team, your co-founders, and then the people that you had brought in that were working with you. And then to see at that time a $5-6 billion company roll out something that it crushes a lot of your functionality. A lot of people fold on that situation like a cheap suit, like a deck of cards. So you were able to pivot, right? And the company now still exists, is very successful. But I want to understand a little bit about your thought process and your mindset when that happened, and what the decision-making process was in the pivot. Now in essence, looking back, we can say, number one, kept the company alive and solvent, and was allowed it to be able to grow to what it is today? Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think there's a few moments that are kind of catalysts for where it is today. There's a term, an acronym called PMF, which is product market fit. And as you kind of traverse these early days of your company, you're walking through this seamlessly endless desert of trying to find product market fit. And the reason I say a desert is because it's so vast, both horizontally and vertically. And it's not like if you go that direction, like you really have to find the right messaging, the right product, the right market, and all of those things have to coincide to achieve PMF, product market fit. And as we were going on this journey, the Snapchat thing happened. And so it's okay. Yeah, they took our idea. I mean, they didn't take our idea, but they rolled out something similar. Right. But on the other side of that coin, it's validating. Mm-hmm. That means that there's a multi-billion-dollar company that sees the value in user-generated content for events. Right. And so what's the next iteration of that? I like to be at the cutting edge. There's a difference between the bleeding edge and the leading edge. And I find myself almost too far sometimes on the bleeding edge, which is a major timing thing. But in this case, it was a catalyst to the moment that became what Shouty became streaming global is today. That moment was when we decided to pivot into live video. And when we pivoted into live video, we learned that the infrastructure to deliver live media and have everybody pick their own perspective, the infrastructure wasn't there. And in fact, what we learned is they're putting Band-Aids on an infrastructure that was built in the 80s or 90s, built in the 90s, for those websites. You remember the DSL, you'd have the phone line ring, and then your website would load from the top down. They're putting Band-Aids trying to build on top of that infrastructure. And that is just not possible to deliver the kind of dynamic content we want to deliver. Right. And so the next big moment for that was we took a blank sheet of paper to how live video is delivered. And at this point, we had a CTO on our team that I actually met through my dad. And they worked together at Warner a long time ago, and or CNN rather. And they
it's kind of funny because we had just gotten reconnected, and he had just come off an acquisition, was looking to mentor some kids back in Georgia. He came, found out what we were doing, and wanted to be, mentor, then became technology architect, then wanted to be hands-on and became CTO. And when we invented a new way to deliver live media, and this is probably the most pivotal moment, right, I stepped aside on my own volition. In fact, when I brought it up to my core team, my two founders and him, it took everybody by surprise. But the reason was, as a leader of a company, you have to do what's best for your shareholders. It's the sum of all parts are greater than the individual. Yeah. That was a hard, and of course it came with growing pains of ego death and whatnot. But I had to do that. And in doing that, I think that was a pivotal moment in my entrepreneurial career, where the first one was a pivot in product. The second one was a pivot in mindset. Yeah. Right. And I realized I didn't take a step back. I took a step aside to let someone who's had an acquisition in this industry, who knows the business models of this industry, who has the contacts and could take our shareholder across that desert to product market fit. Yeah. You don't want to be the guy. I mean, everybody sees the documentaries on Netflix and the stuff about Uber and these CEOs who develop an ego along the way that gets in the way of really what the core thesis of their business is, or in the way of generating value for their shareholders and their stakeholders, which includes your customers. So sometimes it ends up being 180 from what you originally intended. So 100%. Definitely one of those things we like to stay. And you got to be willing to adapt, right? Like that journey to product market fit. Like, again, it's not linear. You might go a long way this way, but it's the wrong way. But you've got to be able to calibrate. And if you're dead set on being right and not winning, right, I think that's the difference. Is I wanted to win. I wanted, it started with, I want to be the next Evan Spiegel, right? Yeah. Ironically, Snapchat kind of, put an end to our first journey. But the 27-year-old guy just took his company public, got a $750 million bonus, is engaged to the Victoria's Secret, model. Like, right, you want to be him. Zuckerberg, right? Zuckerberg's still in his early 30s at this point. Yeah. But then you get to that position, and I'm not saying that's a much different echelon, but you still get to an inflection point. It's like, you know what? I would rather win than be the next Evan Spiegel. Right. So I think that was a big moment in my career and who I am as a person today. Nice. Well, that's a really interesting kind of take on it. I think you probably would not get that same viewpoint from a lot of founders, especially ones who didn't have to either make a change like that in product or especially the change in mindset. But that said, I want to maybe a quick thesis, if you can, on the last couple of years. You've transitioned more or less out of that business. You've got a very, very talented executive team from some of the biggest companies in the world that day-to-day run that organization. And so I want to make sure we have time to get into Keyspace and Web3 and talk about all the things that you're doing there and some of the new things that you're building that are really exciting, that we're excited to use here at Frenik also. So I guess over the past couple of years, what was kind of your inflection point in leaving the day-to-day involvement with that business, and then what was your the genesis for Keyspace, so to speak? Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think when I'm talking and I'm kind of talking about this story, what I really like to say is that those last couple of years with that company were my business school. Right. Yeah. I don't like to say I dropped out because I do want to go back. I say I got a deferred degree from Kennesaw. Yeah. And I'll go back and get it for real one day. But, that was my business school. And it wasn't just the school of hard knocks. I was already going through the school of hard knocks, but I had this incredible mentorship, and I got to see how these executives work. And, our now CEO, who was the CTO I met through my dad, guy, I mean, he had his second acquisition of Microsoft when he was 25. Our CRO, Stanford grad, guy's one of the most incredible enterprise salesmen I've ever met in my life. I learned more from him than I could ever watching a podcast or reading a book. Except for this podcast. Except for the Changemakers podcast, subscribe and like. And then our CFO was also, he was VP of finance at Disney and was CFO of Dr. Seuss. So, and I think Sony Entertainment as well. And so you have this incredible group of people, and it was almost an honor to be pushed out of the main stage, right? And I'm still a large shareholder in that company. I still do business development with it when I can, but it really put me to be my business, was my business school. I think I did a lot more learning with that than I did implementing. And so as you get there and you have that itch to be an entrepreneur and want to keep building, right? It's not a money thing. It's a problem solving thing. It's a puzzle solving thing. And I got really enamored by the NFT space when it came out. And the reason is that for the first time ever, you could authenticate a digital asset, right? If I wanted to give you a picture right now, a digital picture, there's no way for me to do that. And that it's a one of a kind or it's special. And that's why that NFT market took off the way it did, is because for the first time in history, you can authenticate a digital asset as an original. Yeah. And when that came out, I realized what it could be and more. And so one of my investors from the first company, him and I built a friendship. He said, whatever you do next, I want to be a part of it. And we started building and conceptualizing this company. And that was kind of the jump. And so I was fortunate enough to sell some of my shares in my other company, very small amount, because I'm still hyper bullish on where it can go. Right. But I wanted to have runway for this new company to be able to build that. And I didn't want to have to take out that, because when you get to like this level of entrepreneurship, if you really believe in what you're doing, anytime you take a pull or you take money from your company, at least for me, it feels like I'm taking food out of my kid's mouth. Right. And so if I can have the opportunity to not do that, I will. And so that was kind of the moment where I transitioned from, being this business development, learn mode at company one to be builder and leader at company two. Again, putting myself back at the bleeding edge, probably far too soon, but with enough time to iterate and learn the space before others were able to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I want to back up from there, just because we got into a little bit of that, what kind of drew you to the NFT space. Yeah. You guys initially starting Keyspace. And I want to talk about from your perspective, right? Because when it comes to people in this space, you're a thought leader, you're building tools that nobody else has. There's a lot of innovation happening in this space that, like you said, you tend to be right on the bleeding edge, even if it's very, very early in terms of adoption. So talk about a little bit about, at a high level, Web3, and then kind of it's when it comes to digital assets, when it comes to authentication, and then when it comes to data. What's the value, right? When you talk about you sending me if you're going to send me a picture, right? It's like we send each other pictures all the time. We've been friends for 10 years. Like it's random stuff, and it doesn't need to be authenticated. Let's talk about like how this plays into these actual use cases across an authentication, customer loyalty, customer data, these types of things, where people have tangible benefit, because I think that's an area that hinders adoption, that you're one of the thought leaders in breaking down those barriers.
Yeah, no, and I love the way you frame that, because like that is why that bubble, like when people hear NFTs, they think of a $300,000 picture of a cartoon monkey. That was part of the speculation and the hype that took the market off the way it did, is because, okay, cool, you can authenticate a digital asset, and it's the first time in history. And so this new art market took off, but that's not a sustainable. Look how big the art market is in comparison to GDP today. Right? Like, so it was never sustainable. And typically the faster something rises, the quicker it'll fall. But if there's something called the Gartner hype cycle, which is anytime a new technology comes, it has this spike, and then it has this drop, and then it kind of curves, and then it moves incline slowly up to something called the plateau of productivity. Yep. And so these NFTs had that moment, 2021, 2022, and then late 2022, all of 2023, it started to incline up. And why did it start to incline up? And that's the answer to your question, is because it found real utility. And so the approach that we take with it with Keyspace is in loyalty. It's in a whole new way to do loyalty. It's taking this world of collectible items and merging it with this world of loyalty, right? So when I'd say loyalty, think Starbucks rewards. That's a great example. When you go get your Starbucks rewards, it's often a transactional relationship. You buy 9, you get your 10th free. Right. The relationship is only between you and your spending. That's it. It's a one-to-one transactional relationship. Right. Then you have this world of collectibles, where it could be an album vinyl, it could be a Super Bowl ticket, It could be, you know, anything in that nature. And the two worlds have never been able to be merged before. And they are now because of the provenance of the blockchain, which is the proof of ownership.
Right.
And what does that mean? So now I can be a part of a brand and I can buy tickets to events that can be authenticated as originals. I can earn these digital collectibles, which is the new version of points, right? And so what it makes them special because it's not just one-to-one. This value now exists ubiquitously, like interoperably. It's not like if you stop drinking your Starbucks tomorrow, those points are locked in that ecosystem. Right. You don't own them. You're just leasing a wall in there that you're hanging your Starbucks points on. And when you move out of that house, they stay in that house.
Right.
In this new world, because you own these, you're not leasing this wall, you're owning this asset. It can travel with you and it can be traded and others can add value to it because it's all on this thing called the blockchain, which is a public ledger. So think about it as like a library card that's ongoing and public to the world and everyone can just sign piece by piece.
Right, the same way that transactions of Bitcoin and Ethereum are maintained on that same ledger.
So think about like here's a good example, like a Trae Young card, okay? If I have a rookie Trae Young card, the Atlanta Hawks would have to figure out with Topps or you know one of those companies on who owns that card, and then they would have to target me and hope I still have that card. When if I sold you the card, they have no way of knowing that. So there's no retargeting that's able to happen from that. Whereas if the card were an NFT, they would know who holds it. They would know that I sold it to you and you could retarget. So that's where that loyalty and that data comes in. And then with the loyalty piece, no one's ever gotten a free Starbucks coffee and been so excited about it, they screenshot it and put it on Twitter. Like that's never happened because that value only exists in that ecosystem. So you're taking the best of collectibles and making it digital because of digital ownership. And you're taking the best of loyalty and making it collectible again because of digital ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to chain of ownership and the transparency of transactions, things like that, and then authentication, I know, you know, one of the things early on, I guess over the past couple of years that we've discussed is, you know, we see big brands that have big budgets roll out things using Web3 that are of value. For instance, I know we were together right when Breitling rolled out their NFT-based authentication for their watches. Because of course you go to eBay, buy a Rolex, buy a luxury watch, what happens? You get a fake. There's no way to tell until you send. I actually had the same thing happen. I had a Breitling that sent it to, it wasn't ticking, right? I sent it to the factory, whatever, their repair place to get repaired. They sent it back. They're like, yeah, it's a bunch of Chinese pieces jammed into a Breitling frame.
I mean, the fashion and like luxury supply chain and distribution is an incredible use case for this technology. And you're right, like Porsche has done it. Gucci's done it. Starbucks has done it. Starbucks has a whole new decoupled, what's called tokenized loyalty program, which is their Web3 loyalty, completely decoupled from Starbucks rewards, called Starbucks Odyssey.
Yeah.
And it's for a more horizontal, community-driven relationship where you complete these missions. Could be buying coffee on a certain day, could be buying a certain kind of coffee, could be going to do a tour in their metaverse land, and you get these points for doing this stuff, which you can use on stamps, which stamps are NFTs. And there was one day where these stamps had a higher trade volume on an NFT marketplace than traditional art NFTs.
Right. So that's very interesting. I want to dive into a little bit about Keyspace specifically, right? Because we talked about Breitling, we talked about Starbucks and Nike, and you know, when it comes to any technology, if you're a company that's sitting on a asset reserve of $3 to $5 billion, you can hire some people from Google or whoever, wherever in the world and build it. So I want you to go into a little bit about Keyspace and how you're able to, and a little bit of the workflow and process and how you've gotten to where you are now and how it really makes sense for smaller brands, smaller local communities, local restaurants, local organizations, local ticketed events, things like that, to roll out similar technologies, the same concepts, the same technology, but via the Keyspace platform without spending $800,000 in development.
No, absolutely. So I'll start, I like that question. I'll start with a kind of a top-down answer on the problem we're solving, and then I'll give some context, like some case studies. So the problem we're solving is first, the cost of acquisition, lead generation. It is now 7 times more costly to get new eyeballs than to nurture existing eyeballs, right? And at a time when cookies is dying. So that means, how you have, and every time you go on a website now, you have to accept the cookies. This is presenting a massive challenge to marketers because not everyone's accepting that. And it's making it harder to understand and connect with your consumer. So you're dealing with this dissolving of cookies. At the same time, you're dealing with these massive acquisition costs where some marketing agencies can't even work with you unless you have a 5-digit pay-to-play digital advertising budget. So that's why there's this importance on loyalty, and these companies we just talked about, as well as many others, are focusing on loyalty. So now the next question is, why tokenized loyalty over traditional loyalty? And we've kind of already spoken to that, but tokenized loyalty gives people the feeling of ownership. And when you own something, you feel more a piece of it. And it's not that one-to-one transactional relationship. You can do more with it. You can feel a part of it. It can feel like you're going to Comic-Con. It can feel like you're going to an Atlanta Hawks game, but you're just in a loyalty program. But it's because you own a piece of that. And so that's why tokenized loyalty and all these companies are getting in such a massive way. Now, the immediate problem that we solve is Nike. They have Dot Swoosh. Starbucks has Odyssey. Gucci has something called The Vault. Lacoste has something called Underwater. All of these things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and months to develop. And that's including low-code solutions that help people be able to do this quick. With Keyspace, you can launch a tokenized loyalty program in under 25 minutes, no code required. Whether you are Nike or whether you're a mom and pop shop, we're giving everyone an at-bat to be able to turn their customers into collectors into a community. And that's what we like to say. And that's the difference, is that's what we're solving for. Is you can't have technology take off if the barrier to entry is tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars and weeks to months of development. So what does that mean? How can companies do it? So I'll use an example like Overtime Elite in Atlanta. They could do an NFT membership pass for their community. And let's say they want to work with a sponsor, let's say Porsche, for example. And they can actually create utility for Porsche, because the Porsche NFTs live on something called a smart contract, which is like the binding that holds all of them together. It's that authentication. It's like, if that's the authenticating book, the smart contract, each page would be an NFT. Right. So when you can create a special offer for the book, you can actually do that, and you can, without them having to do anything. So Overtime could be like, hey, if you own a Porsche NFT, you can come claim 2 free VIP tickets to tonight's game. And Porsche doesn't even need to know about it. Porsche doesn't need to do anything. And all Overtime has to do is use Keyspace to send up an authenticator where people who have the Porsche NFT can connect their account. If they have the NFT, they can claim the VIP tickets. And what's the value to Overtime? Well, hey, let's say, 50%, let's say 70% of holders that live in the southeast of Porsche took advantage of this. They can now go to Porsche and say, hey, we did this activation. We added utility to your NFT holders. You guys didn't have to do anything. Here's the engagement and the take rates from it. We'd like you to sponsor next season.
So I think one key takeaway there that people are going to want to, especially people on the marketing side of businesses, are going to want to understand is, this is really highlighting the difference between where we are now, or where I guess the last 10 years have primarily been, which is this demographic / supposed intent marketing, where we say, okay, this is a male who's 32.
Correct.
He lives in Alpharetta. He is, he went to Kennesaw State. We've got all of these indicating factors, and so we're gonna serve him an ad based on this. Whereas with Keyspace and with this approach to marketing, and especially being loyalty focused, one of the reasons that loyalty marketing is more valuable when it comes to conversion is because you're targeting them based on their actual interactions that have already taken place with your brand and or your brand partners who have assets that are tied to whatever that collection or community is.
Correct. And to walk you through a story, right? I bought a Gary V NFT. I'm a big fan of Gary V, and he dropped this big NFT collection. If you bought the NFT, you could go to his conference, VCon, for the next 3 years. I go to the conference year one. So I got my NFT. I go to the conference year one because I have the NFT. The only way into the conference is an NFT. The ticket in the conference is an NFT.
Right.
I go in there. I meet 2 guys. One of them is currently on my team doing business development 3 years later. Mm-hmm. The other one is, he had just sold out a big NFT project and was there. He's also it's called VFriends. That's Gary V's project. Okay. He's a VFriends holder. Okay. I meet him. He tells me about this other NFT project that I get into. I buy the NFT to get into that project. I get into what's called token gated chat, meaning you have to have the NFT to access it. It's on Discord, a community chat platform. Mm-hmm. I get into the Discord. I start making connections with people in this digital community. Next thing I know, I'm talking about doing an NFT for a major movie studio because the head of Web3 is also in that Discord. Right. That doesn't happen in traditional loyalty programs. I don't know who else is in this. I can't connect with other people. I'm going to come back to Starbucks in the Starbucks rewards program. I can connect with people in the Starbucks Odyssey program. Right. In fact, there's a conference going on right now called ETH Denver, which is short for Ethereum, ETH Denver. And Starbucks Odyssey is having a community event, not Starbucks rewards. So I just say that story to illustrate, this element of community, right? Your customers are not the product anymore. They're part of the brand. They're brand evangelists because they have ownership in it. Like, this whole concept of ownership, it hasn't clicked with people yet. The magnitude of what it means for this next iteration of digital life that we're going to be moving into.
Yeah, exactly. We see the same thing here, especially, us being very, very service oriented as an agency. And really, we see, because we deal with such a vast array of brands on a monthly basis, of people that come to us net new and say, I need you to accomplish X, Y, and Z as a marketing objective. And when it comes down to it, a lot of what we're doing is based around hyper personalization, and this ties into that perfectly, because it's just like you said, when the cost of acquisition goes up, it's like you've got to look to your existing audience, or how do I, if I'm going to spend a ton of money to get this customer, how do I maximize and enhance their lifetime value to money? Mm-hmm. Or how do I make sure that they're with us for life now? Because I just spent a lot of money to get them. We've got to now turn the value of that customer into
and to
net positive.
No, 100%. And as we move towards this open, decentralized internet, there's this book called The Everything Token, which, if you're watching this and if I'm saying is even minimally interesting to you, you should definitely check this book out. It's written by one of the guys who's a community lead at Starbucks Odyssey, the Web3 program. And he also teaches entrepreneurship, I believe, at Harvard. And the other one teaches market making at Harvard. And so these are the guys who wrote this. And one of the things they said is, in Web2, you have one audience on Twitter, you have one audience on LinkedIn, and you have certain ways you present yourself on each platform. In Web3, the way you present yourself is like, I plug it into the different platforms. It becomes less about the platform and more about me. And that is why it's important for loyalty, because when I plug into these platforms, am I going to lead with the NFTs of my favorite brands? Am I going to lead with the NFTs of my favorite artists? Because there's only so many ways you can present yourself, right? There's only so much room in your wallet to hold cards, your physical wallet to hold cards. Right. It's the same thing here, except you're gonna be able to, connect your wallet. And that's one of the biggest things about this, is kind of that interoperability of UX, where I can connect my wallet and have experiences on platforms. I don't need a different login for each different app. It's all interconnected. And so that, when we're talking about loyalty, loyalty is truly going to have a whole new meaning, because it's not partitioned off of, I follow you on Facebook, I follow you on Instagram. Anytime I plug into a new software, is your NFT the one I'm leading with or not?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a pretty good segue for us to go into, we've kind of gone through the chronology of Keyspace to the current day, your background with entrepreneurship. So being that you are, very much a forward thinker, thought leader in this space, I want to take this next segment to kind of give you the floor and ask you some more open-ended questions in terms of innovation, where you think we're going next. So in terms of, so I've got two sections. This one is Web3, one is technology as a whole. So starting with Web3, right?
Yeah.
You know, obviously when it comes to integration and adoption of a tool or a company like Keyspace, of course, that's something where you see a pretty big hockey stick over the next couple of years. But when it comes to actual use cases, where do you see like the real strong adoption and kind of the indicators coming from right now in your go-to-market?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. You know, we're working with, you know, a couple different companies. One of the ones that I'm really excited about is called NFT Energy. It's an e-commerce company. It's local. It's in Atlanta.
Nice.
And they want to build, you know, a 3com, which is like Web3 e-commerce kind of brand. And they've got a lot of cool ideas that I wish I would have got some of their permission to drop some alpha on here. But, you know, we're dropping a case study that we did with them, and their engagement rates on both social media and email campaigns with the added component of collectibles are not just superior to what they've done in the past. Historically, they shoot far, far beyond industry averages.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking like double, triple industry average open rates, click-through rates, all that kind of stuff. And so we're starting to see, okay, there is real like level of engagement that is happening here. And that's what they're doing. And they're dropping attendance collectibles every time they sponsor an event. And so the more of these collectibles you can have, they can gamify it, right? So an example of that, and again, I'm going to try and tiptoe around this because I don't want to speak too much to what they're doing.
Yeah, of course.
But let's say that they're doing an event and Mark Cuban is the keynote speaker, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't happening. Maybe it will, but I don't know.
Well, Mark obviously watches the pod. Yeah. I'm assuming.
Mark, if you're watching, hit me up on DMs. We'll connect you to NFT Energy. If you're open to investing, but so then you can be like, okay, if you have 5 NFT Energy and NFTs, you can either burn all 5 of them, so to like transact them as if they're money. Mm-hmm. You can burn all 5 of them and get a ticket to this event, or you can hold on to them and maybe there's a recurring raffle, right? There's weekly raffles, and if you have 3 NFTs, you can get into the raffle. They're not being burned. It's more like, instead of being transactional, it's more like credentials, right? So I'm gamified. I can either cash in my 5 NFTs and go to this Mark Cuban event. I can choose not to do that and keep entering into these weekly raffles because I have 3 NFTs, or I could sell all 5 of them. So you're gamifying the experience, but you have to keep putting out collectibles. The idea is, unlike NFTs in 2021, where it's like, hey, we've got 5,000 of them, you know, they're going to be $200, you know, law of economics, supply and demand will drive the market. Right. It's attend my event, collectible, NFT. Listen to my podcast, NFT. Any brand interaction touch point should be given this NFT, which becomes a building block of brand loyalty that can be gamified. Because you can either sell it, you could burn it, or you could hold on to it for the recurring value. Yeah,
I think it's partly right now reliant on some of the bigger brands to do the work of getting the adoption and getting that the monkey.
Well, I'll push back on that though. I'll push back on that though, because it is, but it doesn't have to be. Right. Because a lot of people say, well, you overcome stigma with education. And I'm like, yeah, or you just create better UX. Like you create better design of products that make it more seamless. Like one of the common things that people say is, you know, nobody says, hey, did you hear the new Drake MP3 anymore? Did you hear the new, you know, MP3? No one says that. It's, yo, let me hear that new Drake record, or let me hear that new Drake song. Like the NFT is the underlying technology. So, hey, did you get that Starbucks stamp? Did you get that Nike digital sneaker? Right? Did you get that Gucci sweater? Did you get that NFT Energy attendance collectible? Yeah. Right? That's the kind of thing that needs to happen. And when we can create, and that's what Keyspace is solving for as well, is we're hoping that we can continue building a UX that makes it so easy. We don't need to rely on the behemoths to change the narrative around this technology.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we can create something that's so seamless that you don't even know you're using Web3, but you have the full advantages of ownership and tokenization.
Right. I picture you like, and I've told this to you probably dozens of times at this point, is that I picture your business and Keyspace as really like the Canva is to graphic design as you guys are to the customer loyalty and community space, because you're taking a lot of different moving pieces when it comes to landing page creation, campaign creation, obviously tracking data, dashboards, analytics, and then being able to track that all back to ROI and putting that all into a very simplistic no code type of platform. And then, like you said, you don't have to have a Web3 knowledge to be able to deploy that as a marketer. And so I imagine that slope looking very similar, because I mean, you think about Canva, right? And they take it to a bunch of graphic designers. Well, the thing is, graphic designers don't like to use Canva because they all spent 3 years learning how to use Adobe, right? Just like the engineers that get $800,000 to build these ecosystems for Starbucks and Nike. But the thing is, that's 800, 1,000 companies in the world, right? And so the vast majority of business and transactions that are being done are not those 1,000.
You may not, I love that point. Essentially what you just said in a nutshell is you may not get your technical graphic designers on the platform, but what you did just do is make the whole world a graphic designer.
Exactly. So now I want to jump outside of Web3 a little bit, just have you look into your crystal ball.
Yeah.
So because you're a big Web3 guy, I've got a bet going with our executive producer Neil and our founder here at Frenik, Jordan Sandler, on we got to do a shot for every time you use the term Web 2.5 or Web 3, and we're actually under we're on the under still. So
yeah, I don't even think I've dropped the 2.5 yet.
I know. So I'm actually disappointed here. You're ruining my night. But that said, you're very, very hyper-focused in the Web3 space as it pertains to your target audience, right? Which is good from a business owner perspective. But you're also an innovator. So when it comes to other technologies that are advancing very quickly right now, you've got AI, you've got a lot of things happening in automation, you've got a lot of interesting things because of the increase in computing power. Things like robotics are advancing very, very quickly right now, and then things that are tied into robotics and medical technology, which we're not really in that world so much. But I'm interested to hear what outside of Web3 that's an emerging technology that you would say is your number one, like most exciting technology. Like if you were doing Keyspace, that's what you would. Yeah, you would.
I think spatial computing is really interesting. So like, metaverse, pixel delivery, stuff like that. That's now what my former company is focused on delivering. So we ended up, we serve that live video market with Streaming Global, but we also now serve the pixel delivery market. And so we can help companies deliver these metaverse experiences at fractions of the cost. And, I'm really excited about that because not only do I believe the next version of the internet is something that is going to be open and decentralized and that you're going to have ownership in. You're not going to lease the land anymore. You're going to have ownership in. But it's not something you'll scroll through. It's something you'll walk through. Whether you're using your keyboard or whether you have a Vision Pro or an Oculus on, you don't need the hardware device, right? Like you can be in the metaverse without that. And the metaverse is, often like this overused term, but it really is. And I heard once that, a good definition of the metaverse is it's more philosophical. It's not so much a place, but it's like a point in time where your reality is more digital than it is physical. So in essence, even since AIM, when and anything above that, we're partially in the metaverse because we're digitally communicating. But I think that the surrounding is going to become more digital, which is both, a little exciting and scary, as is with any technology. And then, of course, I think the other one is AI, obligatorily, just because of everything, like all of its capabilities.
Obligatorily.
I don't know if that's a word, but if it is a word, like, put an NFT on it.
Next time we play Scrabble, I know you're going to pull that one out.
Yeah. We'll have to Merriam-Webster that later. But I think metaverse and AI would be my, but both of them could be Web3, right? Like, because you got to define Web3. Like, if you're asking like outside of Web3, what is it? When I hear that, I'm thinking outside of blockchain, NFTs, and crypto.
Yeah.
What else am I excited about? I mean, AI, I pretty much use everywhere in my stack.
Yeah.
Like my personal stack, like whether it's, questions to chat GPT, whether it's, we're putting AI into our platform, like it's just this term, but it's so, I mean, it just does so much. Like as soon as I realized it was the Google killer and that our kids will be like, you guys had to go look on different websites to get your answers. Like that's crazy. Like the UX, when I say UX, what I'm really saying is the experience of doing something, the user experience. Of like, that's just crazy. Like one day our kids are going to be like, you guys really had to type something into a search bar and click on 5 different links of 5 different websites before you got your answer instead of just chatting to something.
It's interesting to theorize on those types of things because you think about like a very big like AAA rated stock type of company from the 90s. Like I think of a Kodak, right? And they're like, everybody's walking around with a, when they came out with a digital camera. And of course, when they started putting decent cameras on phones, right? No one's gonna buy a Kodak, and they've, went 3 sheets to the wind or whatever. I don't know if that's the right saying for
something
that.
Like that.
I think that's for drunk people, but nonetheless, right? And I was like, what you're just saying about spatial computing. Where does a company, you've got your companies like LG, Samsung, Acer, computer hardware companies, but companies that make a lot of money selling monitors and televisions, right? Where does if in a 5-year period that entire revenue stream disintegrates, who are the winners and losers in that space? And
it's a good question. I mean, Nvidia is definitely a winner.
That's because they're making the infrastructure.
Right. And it's like that's kind of the exciting part about it. Like I'm sure a lot of people watching have seen the Apple Vision or the Vision, Pro.
The demos,
yeah. And like you can I have 3 monitors at home. Now I can have a monitor here and a monitor there and monitor everywhere. And like that's what it's like being able to walk through the digital world instead of scroll through it is going to change. And who knows what's going to come from these devices. But there are going to be blockbusters at every point of evolution.
Yeah.
So I don't have a crystal ball in terms of being able to predict which of these companies are going to win and which ones are going to lose. I know they have a lot of time to figure it out. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow,
right?
But it is something that's going to happen. So it'll be exciting to see how it plays out.
Definitely. So we're getting to the fun part here. I hope you know that. So we're coming up to the coveted Changemakers lightning round.
Wow, the coveted Changemakers.
So you already got one of these because I was going to ask you well, actually, you know what? The answer might be different to this. So I'm going to leave it in the lightning round. Okay. So these got to be off the cuff. If I could tell you think about it, then we dunk you in an ice bath after the show. So first one on the list, if you had to choose one book that has most impacted your entrepreneurial journey, what would it be?
Focus on the problem, not the solution. Written by the founder of Waze, and the foreword is written by Steve Wozniak. This book is the best book any entrepreneur can read. I made a lot of mistakes and I learned a lot that way, but this book was able to conceptualize things. It helped me get to how do you structure things in a way that's right? And it was recommended to me by one of my advisors at Keyspace. So this is actually fairly recent. Within the last year, I read this and I've bought it for a bunch of people. Yeah. I've read it twice now. It is, one the opening page I've screenshot, like I've taken a picture of it and sent it to friends. And, it talks about him being in the room after being, the founder of Waze, I think his name's Yuri. After being denied by Google dozens of times, he's finally in the room with Google and they give him a multi-billion-dollar term sheet, 1-page document. And it's like, and nothing hits like that first time. Yeah. And that's like the intro of the book. And I'm getting chills thinking about it because that's every entrepreneur's dream, but it's so pragmatic in what it tells you to get there. I mean, the foreword written by the co-founder of Apple talking about how this book is everything he's ever thought about business. And that's why he's co-signed by writing the foreword of it. I would recommend that book. If you never read another book in your life in business and only read that one, I think you would have a fairly strong chance of being successful.
That's a pretty high cut. You and Woz should run the book tour for that.
Yeah, we should. I'll be his hype man. I'll be his MC.
Yeah. You just get up there wearing all your blockchains.
Yeah, I got a picture of big Steve Woz blockchain necklace.
So this is a fun one. What would you say is your number one non-technology related hobby to unwind?
Hanging out with my fiance. Yeah, that's probably about it, because hey, right. I say it loud and proud, but I mean, I love to work, in fact, like to the point where, like, I'll say this, you've probably heard me say this before, like some dudes play video games, some dudes go to the club and chase girls, and some women too, vice versa, go to the club, to find guys. Some like to play video games as well. I know a lot of women that like to play Zelda. I like to stay up late and do Figmas, like create wireframes that I can send to my developers. Like, I truly love to work. Like, I don't look at things as being problems. I look at them as being puzzles, right? And the difference is, I'm gonna brief tangent, because this is one of my favorite things that I say, like, that I just love. But like, a problem is like a glass family heirloom that just shattered, generationally handed down, just shattered into a bajillion pieces. It's irreplaceable and unfixable. Whereas a puzzle is just 6 pieces that you put together. And when you look at things as like a puzzle and not a problem, you almost get addicted to solving the biggest ones possible. And so that's like the reason it's hanging out with my fiance, is because that's really all I have time to do. Like, unless you're like a really, really close friend, if we're not building and solving a problem together, which is my main thing, my main hobby, then I'm focused on building a life with my significant other, because I love my parents still together. My dad's a really good role model. Like, I want to live that. So I'm very, very focused in my time allocation. And if I'm not working, I'm working towards a family. If I'm not doing that, I almost feel bad if I'm not working.
Right. Nice. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. Last one. Then we're back to a Web3 one. So you can exhale. So you don't.
Oh my God! You threw me out of Web3 for a minute. Yeah, I'm sweating. Yeah, let me bring it in the hives.
Can we get the paramedic? Yeah. Oh my God!
Thank God you brought it back just in time.
So yeah, last one on the lightning round. What is your favorite digital collectible that you own?
That's a good one, man. That's a good one. There's this one called OD Labs. I think it's called Lulu, that I just bought. It's the first augmented reality gen art collection for NFTs. I'm super excited about that project. Just bought in. NFT Energy. I have a bunch of their collectibles from attending their events. I'm not just saying that because they're one of our users, one of our clients, but like I really believe in the path that they're forging in terms of Web3 e-commerce. My VFriends NFT has brought me tremendous value, as I've outlined. And then there's this other one called Neo Tokyo. I actually just sold it, but I got into that community. That's where I met the head of Web3 at this large movie studio. So I love that one. And then I have one from Michelin, the Michelin tire company. Mm-hmm. It's called 3 Explorer. That one has like weekly raffles where you can earn Michelin dinners and all of that. And it's super cool. Like, how often did I, tangent, because that's the answer right there. But just being a bit tangential real quick is like, how often do you think of Michelin? Maybe once a year when you go get new tires. Now I'm not only talking about it on a podcast, like I'm interacting with the brand daily, and in a way where it's personified to me. It's not just the tire company. It's this company that I own a piece of the brand and I'm actively involved with weekly, daily.
Right.
So I think those would be my favorite if I had to really think about it. I don't have my phone on me, but I'm sure I'm missing something. I'm like, I'm going to go and I'm going to
you listed a few, so I'm just going to put your Hello Kitty NFT.
Oh, yeah. I'll put that one down.
Hey, but you know what? Maybe if I gain a few pounds, maybe you'll think about, I'll look a little bit more like the Michelin Man. So then I'll remind you of Michelin even more often.
It's going to take a little more than a few pounds.
All right, fair enough.
But no, that's a good question. And like, if I had to like really kind of like break it down and like what type of NFT is my favorite, it's the ones in the market that I'm in, right? Like, I believe in tokenized loyalty because not just because I've been studying, a student of the game, not because I've been building it, but I am a consumer. I hold Nike.swoosh NFTs. I'm in Starbucks Odyssey. I have the Michelin NFT. I get the NFTs for when Coinbase does a new product launch and they're doing, hey, we're doing a new product launch, claim the NFT to celebrate it. Like Samsung, like I am a consumer of these brand-based tokens. And I think that those are my favorite. Like the art market ones are cool, and there is a place for them, especially for the micro communities that are built around them, like the Bored Ape Yacht Clubs, the CryptoPunks.
Yeah.
But I really see this world of tokenized loyalty from the lens of a consumer as much as I do from a builder. So like that's why I think they all fall into that bucket.
Nice.
Do I get to make my joke now?
I don't have. I was gonna say I left a pause there so you can get one in. I was like
filling the space.
Just like take a.
What do I do with my hands?
Oh my gosh! So you don't have a joke?
No, I don't have a joke.
Okay, fair enough.
With one real quick.
Okay.
No, let's do it next time.
Okay, we'll save that one for next time. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions, if you want to learn how your brand or how your company or how your agency can start using Keyspace to deploy Web3 campaigns and some of the more minutia around the data and things like that, definitely check out Keyspace at keyspace.studio. Reach out to us. We can connect you with Jonathan and his team. Other than that, be sure to catch us next week on our 3rd episode, time's flying by, of the Changemakers podcast, brought to you by Frenik Labs. It's Matt Bravo with Jonathan Hessing, and we will see you next time. Finger guns.